He is a retired orthopedic surgeon, a researcher, a historian, an author, lecturer, and talk show host. Dr. Monteith has educated audiences both nationally and internationally on a wide variety of subjects and is particularly knowledgeable about teacher, author Carroll Quigley, having researched his life and times almost 30 years. Significantly, Professor Quigley was both instructor and mentor to a young, impressionable Bill Clinton, influencing him while he attended Georgetown University in the mid-1960s. Not surprisingly then, in accepting the Democratic nomination for the presidency in 1992, Clinton publicly acknowledged Quigley. Why are the professor's work and influence important? In his books, Tragedy and Hope and the Anglo-American Establishment, he speaks about a secret society comprised of the world's financial elite and their plan to create a worldwide feudalistic system under their control. Today, they allegedly dominate both major political parties in America, making a mockery of the democratic process. This evening, Dr. Monteith will speak to those subjects and share some shocking revelations and elaborate on why recognition of the hidden forces behind the Anglo-American secret society is essential if America hopes to survive as a free nation. Now, please join me in a nice warm welcome for Dr. Stanley Monteith.
Well, good evening. Thank you. It's awfully good to be here with you again. And tonight I'm going to tell you an amazing, amazing story that is probably quite poorly understood. In fact, much of what we're going to tell you tonight we really haven't gone into before. It's been said that an understanding of the forces which have shaped the events of the 20th century is predicated not upon facts to be learned, but upon secrets to be discovered. Let me repeat that. An understanding of the forces which have shaped the events of the 20th century is predicated not on facts to be learned, but upon secrets to be discovered. And how do you really understand what indeed has happened during this 20th century as we see our nation going from crisis to crisis? We see wars and revolutions and disease throughout the world. We see a gradually lowering of American living standards. We see successive administrations, whether they be Republican or Democrat, who refuse to build any sort of a defense for America against nuclear attack. We knew that we've got the Republicans into office, everything was going to be fine. We'd get a balanced budget, we'd cut back on big government, and what have we done? Why, we've actually increased spending for next year and the year after that. In fact, many times the Republicans have been giving more money than the Democratic administration had asked for. And something's seriously wrong. Well, let me try to explain what it is. And as a preface, I'd like to tell you 3 poems, because these poems have to do with the shaping of our destiny. The first one was written in 1848 by Alfred Lord Tennyson, a British author, one of the greatest authors. He wrote The Charge of the Light Brigade. But he was also part of this belief in the British Empire, this idea that mankind could create a perfect world under Anglo-Saxon domination. The title of the poem is Locksley Hall. And this is what Lord Tennyson wrote. For I dipped into the future, far as any eye could see, saw a vision of the world and all the wonders that would be. Heard the heavens filled with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew of the nation's airy navies grappling in the central blue, till the war drums throbbed no longer, and the battlefields were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the world. Then the common sense of most will keep the awe in fretful awe, and the kindly earth shall slumber, lapped in universal law. It was a wonderful dream, this idea of a world government under the benevolent rule of world rule for world law. In October of 1993, Arthur Schlesinger Jr. wrote an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. And this is what he said: the world of law will not be attained by exhortation. Law requires enforcement. Let's not kid ourselves that we can have a new world order without paying for it in blood as well as in money. Maybe the cost of enforcement will be too great. National interest, narrowly construed, will be a safer rule. But let us recognize that we are surrendering a noble dream. Remember those lines of Tennyson that Churchill called the most wonderful of modern prophecies, and that Harry Truman carried in his wallet throughout his life. And then he quotes this poem that I've just given you. Now, why would Winston Churchill say that that was such a wonderful poem? I mean, wasn't Churchill dedicated to the British Empire? And Harry Truman, why, give him hell, Harry, why did he carry those words in his wallet all of his life? And then you look back to the time of Harry Truman's presidency when the United Nations Charter was written and confirmed. And then, of course, we offered the Marshall Plan to Europe because Europe was in danger of going communism, and then we offered the Marshall Plan to the communists. And that didn't quite make sense. And then, of course, China went communist, and Eastern Europe went communist, and then we went into the no-win war in Korea, all under Harry S. Truman, who carried the words to this poem in his wallet all of his life. The second poem I encountered when I went to live in Africa. And in the mid-1970s, I took my family, moved to South Africa, where I taught at a major university. And I was searching at that time, because I'd already heard of Carroll Quigley, I'd read his book, and I knew that South Africa had something to do with this move towards world government. And so it was that driving along the west coast of southern Africa, there I saw on a hillside this great monument. I didn't know what it was, but I was intrigued by it. I mean, what was this great granite monument doing there with the pillars almost looked like a small replica of the Lincoln Memorial? And so I climbed the long stairway past tier after tier of granite lions that were guarding the entrance to this almost shrine. And there within the portico, you see this great statue, the bust of a man and a pedestal beneath it. And inscribed on that pedestal were these words: "The intense and brooding spirit still shall quicken and control. Living, he was the land, and dead, his soul shall be her soul." Those words were penned by Rudyard Kipling to honor the man who adopted the vision that was put forward in Tennyson's poem. A man who was intent upon bringing world government under Anglo-Saxon domination. His name was Cecil John Rhodes. The intense and brooding spirit still shall quicken and control. To quicken is to come back to life. Living, he was the land, and dead, his soul shall be her soul. And let me tell you that there have been many men who wanted to rule the world. I mean, certainly Julius Caesar or Alexander the Great. They say he died because he had no more worlds to conquer. Adolf Hitler, Rousseau. But no one has had more influence on the world than Cecil John Rhodes. And the tragedy is that most people don't understand that almost everything that's going on in the world today has to do with that man. The third poem was written by James Russell Lowell. It was also written in 1848. And it really summarizes the essence of the battle in which we're involved. James Russell Lowell was writing about the crisis of slavery as it faced America and the moral wrong that was going on, and the eternal battle that has always existed between good and evil. And this is what James Russell Lowell said: "Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide. In that strife of truth with falsehood for the good or evil side, then it is the brave man chooses, while the coward stands aside, until the multitudes make virtue of the faith they have denied. Though the cause of evil prospers, yet his truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong. But that scaffold sways the future, for in the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own." And he was talking about a strife of truth with falsehood. Well, I briefly wanted to mention one of my favorite murder mysteries. And you may wonder what this has to do with the story we're telling you tonight, but it's a story written by Agatha Christie. It's called Murder on the Orient Express, and it's the story of this train line that runs from Istanbul to Paris, and it brings the mystery of the East to the rationalism of the West. And during the early part of the century, this work of fiction tells of this train, and of course there are a number of Americans on it, and there is a Monsieur Poirot, who is a Belgian police officer. He's a Belgian detective. He's the hero of many Agatha Christie murder mysteries, murder stories. And there's a very disreputable American on this train who tells Monsieur Poirot that somebody's trying to kill him, and he wants Monsieur Poirot to protect his life, and he'll give him $5,000. He'll give him $10,000. He's worried about his life. And Monsieur Poirot says, no, I'm not interested. And that night, that very night, this man is murdered. And he's stabbed to death. And there's a question